Cult of personality, the cult of personality, the cult of personality.
Welcome back to the Cult of Personality podcast, hosted by yours truly, once again, Mikeymcchoppa. And with us today, we have a very special guest, a very new face, Aaron from Studio 404. What's up, Aaron?
How's it going, guys?
How's everything going, man?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
We're in your space today. We're not in the Cult HQ, even though we're in person. Usually, whenever I do anything outside of my perimeters, it's on Zoom. But we're here in Studio 404, here to talk about it. But first, before I want to get into, the meat and cheese of the interview, I want to talk about you in the sense of, where did your love for music or creativity come from to build this place, in the sense of
For sure.
your artistry?
I think I have kind of talked in the past, with other people at least, about, my, love for music. So I think, everyone who's, fallen in love with music, kind of has that moment that they heard something that they connected with. 100%. I think it all kind of, everyone has their own unique version of that, but it's something that kind of, there's that, catalyst that kind of awakens that. But I think from my perspective as someone that, runs a studio, I think, finding, what was the inspiration for me to start doing this is kind of, a more interesting question because it's, only very few people in the music industry decide to be in recording and producing, and of those people an even smaller amount decide hey, let me start my own studio,
Right.
Jeez.
I feel like it's not an opportunity. No, it's all good. I feel like it's not an opportunity that arises to many. I feel like a lot of people get into music, just through wanting to be an artist, maybe a videographer, maybe something like that. To become something so big, I think to own a studio is almost to own a record label, It's bugged out. It's branched out.
It's different for sure.
100%.
I mean, I think when you're coming from a label perspective, it's very business oriented. It's very money oriented. It's very transactional. I've had the pleasure of working with people who are working in labels before. I've done work with people that are part of RCA, Republic, Atlantic, couple others. So, I've had a lot of awesome opportunities, and I've done a lot of great work with those people that I'm very proud of. But it's a very different environment, where it's this space of how do we make this person successful? How do we market them? How do we make a return on our investment? Right. It's a very much it's all business play. There's not really this how do I make something great? How do I kind of get to push an artist further? Those kinds of things. Those are not really the questions that are being asked in that kind of space. And so I think for me, wanting to do my own thing was something that I wanted for a long time. I think I feel like most people who are kind of within this space, they I would love to own my own studio at some point, especially if they're an engineer. I think the same way that every artist wants to be famous, every engineer wants to have their own studio and production house and stuff like that. I think that's just kind of this inevitable, this is the upper echelon of what I could possibly achieve in this path, But I think what kind of inspired me to say no, I need to do my own thing was just kind of seeing the way that the process was there. It is very corporate, and I think people don't have that perception from the outside looking in, right? Just because they see this thing and it's oh, this is a creative industry, this is a creative business, Right. I think people still identify oh, labels are business people first, but I think it's also that there's they're a different kind of business people. Right. You know what I mean? It's not like that. They're not different, know? And not to say that there's inherently anything wrong with that. I guess it depends on who you ask. That's a much more subjective question. But I think in the terms of is that how I want to live my life? I don't think so.
No.
So
it's more their business first, handling creativity. I feel in this avenue, you're creativity with business on the side. It comes with the business aspect of it.
Exactly.
I get you.
And obviously being an owner, there's still plenty of things I don't want to do. Taxes.
Yeah.
Taxes are definitely one of them. I don't want to do taxes. IRS. Please leave me alone. Shout out you guys.
Shit.
I'm exactly. But you know, it's just interesting because it's like there is all this kind of business responsibility, but it's definitely secondary to the things I want to do. Like I'm not running a recording studio because I want to make money.
Right.
You know, I'm running a recording studio because I want to help people create, and I want to do it the way that I like to do it, and I want to build something that doesn't feel like it exists elsewhere.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
100%. Before Studio 404, where did you get any sort of studio experience? Whether it was just being in the environment or like recording in a studio.
Yeah,
or
for
anything
sure.
Like that.
So I started doing music in general like when I was 14,
Okay.
turning 15 back in 2014, and at that time when I was turning 15, that's basically when I started getting into production. From there, I was doing production kind of just on my own for like 2 years. I was messing around with a lot of different stuff. From there, I had met some other people at my school who were doing music, and they kind of wanted to bring me on and like have me producing for like them and artists that they know.
Right.
And from there, that kind of like formed what was like originally 404, which was like literally just like a group of like guys that like mostly just like went to Brooklyn Tech and like did music. That was like literally the foundation of that. And it just kind of expanded from there. So, you know, one of like the first people I worked with out of that group, his name is Landon. And he actually just dropped a project recently too, which
shit.
I'm
Shout
very
out
proud of
Landon.
because I did a couple tracks on that. Yeah, it's literally called "What Happened to Landon" because
shit.
he didn't drop for a while.
Yeah, so
I made
it's
him feel
like
guilty about that.
breaking the
But,
hiatus.
yeah, exactly. Like just in terms of that time, it was kind of like then we started kind of going to some studios here in Brooklyn. I started working with this guy. Shout out to Will, who doesn't do music anymore, so that's why I'm not going to divulge anything more than that. He has a private life.
Nice.
Love that guy, and he taught me a lot early on about music and engineering and stuff like that. From there, I went to college. I went to Full Sail in Orlando, which is shout out Full Sail, great college. I had a great time there. A lot of really incredible teachers, you know, and it was in general, it was just an amazing experience, you know. And I think what was interesting was like I kind of like since then have kind of seen people that were like either went there, not necessarily people I know, but just people that went there who were like, oh, like I went there and I feel like I didn't get anything out of it, or like I didn't get any opportunities. But like being in the creative industry, like you kind of need to build your own opportunities.
You have to
you
give
know,
in
like,
order to like get back.
yeah,
a little.
like you
Yeah.
can't just like get a
Expect.
degree and then like move into something, you know. Like I think a lot of other parts of this world, there is this kind of expectation that, oh, if I go to college and I like get a degree,
Yeah.
I can use that degree to then just like basically as like a ticket to get into
And that's not how it
like an
works.
entry level job. And it's just yeah, that's not how it works.
gotta make the connections.
in the music industry. Yeah, so like
Full Sail.
yeah.
Full Sail's cool though. Like, yo, that was a school that I like remember looking at when I was like 14
Yeah.
and being like, I want to go there. You know?
Yeah, no, I remember I was like literally like figuring out like where would I want to go because like I want to make this music thing my like whole life. And I ended up finding that out, and like also like shout out my mom for being like mad supportive that entire time. We like went to Florida before like
Holy
my like during
shit.
my senior year of high school so that we could like go and do a tour of the college, and like I was just like this is it, like this is what I got to do. And so even though I don't like Florida as a place, I'm sorry if people from Florida.
I understand.
Miami's all right. Orlando is not. They got good food there. They got good food in Orlando.
It's
That's one
just-
thing I'll say. They got good food. Everything else sucks.
It's just
But-
it's really hot and people praise it because like it's cheaper than New York and it's hotter than New York.
It's not cheaper anymore, man. It's crazy out there now.
One
It's
and two,
crazy
it's
out
still
there.
ratchet as hell over there. Like just how it is over here.
Orlando is not like the coolest place to live. But it was a great time there, at least school wise. And so like finishing that up, I came back to New York. And I just started like reaching out to a million studios, just applying. Eventually I got an internship opportunity at Quad Studios in Times Square.
Oh, shit.
So that was like a really cool first experience. I built up through there. Those are kind of the times that I leveraged the connections that I ended up making, and that's how I ended up starting to do work with like Republic RCA, people that were like within that space. And you know, I didn't stick around in Quad too long just because I had other opportunities, and I was like,
yeah, it's like a stepping stone.
yeah, exactly. You know, I that's kind of how I treated it, and you know, I also just wasn't like too big of a fan of like how commercial it felt being there. Like it was very much like well-oiled machine kind of business that was like, this isn't really what I'm interested in doing. So I knew that even if I did kind of stick around in that kind of place, I don't think I would have wanted to stay there. You know, I think it's just kind of like the reality of it, the way that they like build their business. And, you know, I think also just a lot of the studios in like a lot of the bigger studios in New York in general kind of follow that like sort of like idea. It feels, I wouldn't say it feels corporate as much as it feels like they just care about getting money. You know, like it's just income for them. It's just a business, you know. And I think it's not a bad way to run a studio in terms of like making sure the operations are going and stuff like that. Right. But you're not making like a wholesome experience for like the people that you're working with. Right. And I've like, the more that I've done the work that I do, I realize that like the one-on-one and like having like actually building a connection with the artists you work with like means so much more. And like people will work with someone that's not necessarily as talented or as like high end, quote unquote, as someone else just because they feel more comfortable recording with them, just because they feel like they connect with that person better, they communicate better, whatever that may be. Right. You know, and so, you know, at the same time, like running a studio, it's a luxury service too, you know, like effectively it is a luxury, you know, to be able to record in the studio. There's, this shit is luxurious, you know, you're not gonna I mean, it's just in the sense of like, if you're like, oh man, money's tight this month, do I choose groceries or do I choose the studio? Like, no one's ever asking that question unless you're like, if you're asking that question, like, please stop. Like, you might have a problem. Yeah. But
it's like ramen noodles every night, but at least I'm in the stew next week. Fuck it. Yo.
I feel like there's definitely some people out there like that. Hopefully they're not my clients because I don't want people to live that way. Yeah. You know, but what's it called? It's in the sense of like, I'm offering something to somebody that they have the luxury to pay for. So if they're willing to invest their hard-earned money into something that is, you know, like a pursuit that is not necessarily an easy pursuit either, then why am I going to phone it in? Right. You know, that's really how I feel about it. I think so many times you go to these other places and it's like the work is good, but it's not anything beyond good. It's just good.
It's just me, like, you know, average.
Yeah. And I think like one of my favorite things when it comes to working with artists is helping them elevate their craft. And so wrapping back all around to like me doing the work with like with labels and stuff like that, I was working out of another studio on Fifth Avenue, and at that same time I started doing sessions at home. Okay. And it was literally just my room, like a quarter the size of this room, basically. You know, typical Bushwick apartment, bedroom. But I had literally just set up like this exact desk was the desk that I had in there. Oh, I didn't have equipment that was this nice. But it was this same desk. Wow. Actually, this same monitor too. Shout out this monitor.
It's been a long way.
I wish they still sold this monitor. I would have bought it again because I've had it for 6 years now and it still looks like it's new.
Yeah, that's kicking. That shit looks curved and everything.
Yeah, man, like it looks great. But what's it called? And then my bed was a futon. So during the day when I would do sessions, I just had it set up as a couch, and then I pull it out at night and go to bed, you know? And it just kind of happened that like one day I had like a really good day, like at at home, just like, got a bunch of sessions. And then I looked and I realized that what I was making at home in a day was more than I made in a week.
Wow, yeah.
Working at a label.
Yeah.
And I was like, not only do I like doing this more, but I'm also making way more money. Being able to kind of like take control of
being your own like, head honcho.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it was literally the next week I had basically been like, I'm putting in my 2 weeks, and like it was like no hard feelings or anything like that. And I'm definitely still in contact with some of those people today, but
my fault. Did you feel secure within that transition of going on your own?
Absolutely not. I think you'd have to feel a little crazy. You'd have to be a little crazy to feel that way. But I think fear is also a regular side effect of stepping into the unknown.
Right.
And I think it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be uncertain and maybe not really know what's next and, make a plan B, whatever those kinds of things, like whatever makes you feel a little bit more protected, like I think that's valid because it's not easy.
Right.
And it's not guaranteed to be successful. I'm still not guaranteed to be successful.
Right.
Like God forbid, but all my clients could dry up tomorrow and then I go broke, and I don't think that that's likely to happen. I think we'd have to be in pretty bad ways for the world for things to like get that bad for me as a business. But the fact of the matter is I started doing it, like I started engineering full time in the middle of COVID.
Shit.
This was literally summer, like end of the summer 2020.
I would have been
that
scared
I
shitless.
had quit my job, my salary job, to go and do this full time.
Yeah.
Because I just knew that this would be something more fruitful. And then basically the next year we had found this space, moved in here. And then middle of last year we just built our second room too, and we're continuing to expand. Yeah, I appreciate it.
That's dope. And we're gonna get into that for sure. Before we get into the meat and cheese of the interview as well, I wanted to ask, when you were like, younger, 14, 15, and you started producing, were you always just producer engineer, or did you ever try to do vocals?
I didn't really try to do vocals at that point. I only really started doing vocals like 2020, I'd say. I think that was like the first time I was like screw it, like let me get on a mic. And like I had first started with like doing some like rapping stuff, and then I was like, this isn't me. I'm not this guy. And I think for me I kind of realized like if I'm gonna like say things on a song, like I want it to like come from the heart. I want it to feel like me.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the music, I did get an opportunity to put out a decent bit of music last year, which I was proud of, and basically all of it featured my vocals, and I've also been working on some new stuff too. And
that's dope.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool, man. When you started, before we get again to the meat and cheese of everything, but when you started doing the music and stuff, and you said you were starting as rapping or whatever, how did your sound evolve from the beginning where you were going for this rap style, and what are you doing now?
I think at the beginning it was definitely this thing of like I was kind of emulating the other people that I worked with who like I liked their rapping for one reason or another. It was like they have a good cadence, they know how to flow well, they have a good tone to their voice, and I just kind of realized like, hey, like all of those things are things you can manipulate. You can manipulate the tone of your voice, you can manipulate your pitch, you can manipulate your timing and your cadence and stuff like that. So I was like kind of just treating it as like a blank canvas and kind of seeing what would stick basically.
Hell yeah.
And some of the things came out cool. It's funny because I've literally had some of my guys like also again rapping back. Shout out Landon, because that was the first person that I did this track with, and he was like, we gotta drop it, and I was like, I don't want to put it out anymore, and I know he was pissed off at me. I don't blame him. Because it's like, we've been sitting on this song for like 2-3 years now. Why don't you want to drop it? But it's like, it just, not that it wasn't good. It just didn't feel like it was who I was. And, I kind of definitely still, rapping elements, like I would definitely not call anything that I've put out in the past while like rap by any means. I definitely think that there's like elements of like doing flow and stuff like that, but I think I'm definitely much more in like the singing kind of world, you know.
Yeah.
You know, not to say that there's anything like I don't know how to describe it correctly, really. That's kind of it. It's just like I think it's we live in a time where it's like it's inseparable to like anything is inseparable from another, basically, right?
Yeah.
You know, like
kinda just
every
make up-
genre is being influenced by each other, and especially like rap music is pop music now too.
Yep.
So, you know, like I think it's inevitable that will influence other things. So it's like I'm not gonna act like the influence isn't there,
Right.
but it's just like not what I would consider it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely much more like I would classify it more in the category of singing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's so funny because like I've always had my reservations about genres in general, just the term or the ideas of genres, just because I think everything's too fluid to be divided.
Especially in this day and age, 100%.
You know, but that's cool, man. And I just wanted to ask a little bit about your artistry as individual before we go
Yeah.
into like the brand of Studio 404. But now that we got that out the way, I would like to ask about Studio 404. You mentioned, we'll just get into it. It's a big main question. So,
Yeah.
Aaron, from Studio 404 and Studio 404 in its entirety, the name, the image, the aura, and the energy, pretty much how did it start? How did we get to this very point? Like an origin story. I know you mentioned 404 as like a collective almost.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of stuff there. A lot of friends, a lot of people that are no longer like associated with it too. So
Yeah.
like mostly for the sake of comfort, there's certain things that I just want to omit, not because I like don't like people, but just because, you know, like
Yeah, 100%.
whatever the
Whatever you're
associations
comfy
are
with.
currently, I don't want to like, you know, do anything
Always.
of that nature. But I would say really it started off in what was it, 2017 basically. It was my senior year in high school, and what's it called? I basically two of my friends at the time had approached me senior year of high school. I was approached by two of my friends, one of which is still associated with the studio. His name's Alan. And so they had basically been working on clothing at the time, and they just needed someone who could help out in graphic design. And at the time, I was also doing a lot of graphic design work because it was also part of like my like high school classes.
Nice.
And so they had just kind of been like, oh, like we know you're like pretty good at this stuff, so like, can you come and like help us out? And like, I was like, yeah, why not? So I helped them with basically creating and proofing their designs. They came up with everything. Like I didn't like originate any of the designs necessarily, but they would kind of give me like the parameters, the context, stuff like that, and I would help like arrange it, put it together.
Oh yeah.
And it was definitely a lot of fun. There was a lot of cool stuff from that time, but after we had kind of been doing that for a couple months, basically they had told me that a couple of their friends had started making music and wanted my help on the music end too. And so I was like, yeah, cool. So we kind of started hanging out. The two original guys that were part of the group who were originally we were doing music with.
Yeah.
I don't work with either of them anymore. I haven't talked to either of them in years, but
Yeah.
during that span of time that we had first started working together was also when I went off to college. So I was doing a lot of work out in Florida. They'd basically be recording up in New York, sending me stuff. I'd also be sending them back like beats and other things like that. So at that point, a couple other people that are still like with the group now had joined like throughout 2017. So that would be our guys Landon,
Yeah.
another one of our artists that we work with, Love Turn, King Midas, Jay Gold, and then like I would say the year after that, two of the other guys, and that's basically the entire team. Ty P and Bag Boy Bonds. So that's basically
So, like,
was
over
like
this
those were
2-year
like
period, right?
Yeah, was basically we had kind of like came together as a collective doing music, stuff like that. And so the entire time that like I'm in school, I'm like, yo, like when we get back, like I'm gonna like stack some bread and, you know, invest it into like a decent home setup, and like we're just gonna be recording music and like getting shit done.
Yeah.
And so, you know, went through school, came back, did what I said I was gonna do. We started working on a bunch of music and stuff like that. And through that time was when we started kind of like, I started getting a bit more comfortable. At the same time, I'm doing my internships. I'm kind of moving up through that.
Right.
I'm getting more familiar with the actual recording process, doing business stuff like that. Start getting my first paid clients. 2019 goes to 2020.
Yeah.
We all know what happened then.
Right.
It got really weird for me at a time because it's basically like I'm home doing nothing, and like I'm still getting paid by the studio job that's like through the label and stuff like that, but like it's kind of like everything's in flux. They're kind of getting me to do more management work.
Right.
And then at that time, you know, I think most people by the summer of 2020, that's when things started. People got like really antsy. I mean, like that was a really crazy time, especially in the city. Like thinking back on that, I kind of, things that maybe are a little too charged to mention here, but there was definitely a lot of really crazy stuff going on at that time.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of once that threshold kind of went past in like July and August, you know, I started really meeting a lot of artists who were, I'm trying to get back in the studio. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to find people that are like looking to work. And so I started doing a lot more engineering sessions, and then that's kind of what built me up to that point where it was like, I'm making more money at home than I am at what's actually supposed to be my job. So now this is going to be my job. And
which it was really it was really convenient for that timing too, you know? Like everyone got laid off in 2020. By the summertime, everyone's like, all right, that 2 weeks off was not 2 weeks, you know?
Yep.
So to invest in yourself in that moment is really dope.
I think that's honestly a really big part of like why that I kind of felt that surge. I think a lot of people were like, wow, life is completely different now. Like, fuck all this shit that I was doing before. Like, I'm gonna take the initiative, like do the things I want to do. I'm gonna like move forward in that. I'm gonna charge forward through it, you know? So I think in that sense, you know, it was a very unique time, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it created a very unique set of conditions that provided me with success. And I think honestly that same effect happened to me too. I think I was like, why don't I just do this myself?
Right.
You know? And I remember even in 2019, like I felt weird that whole time. I was like, I feel like working at these places is like not me. This is like not what I do, you know? And like I had another part-time job supporting me, obviously, you know, because I'm not getting paid at the internship, you know?
Right.
I'm doing an unpaid internship, and then I'm working with people at home. So in between, you know, I had a 9 to 5, which wasn't particularly fun, but I don't do that amount of things today. And I'm like, I feel like I always have too much going on. So I'm like, I have no clue
how
I'm managing to do that. But like, I don't know, the insane energy of 19, 20-year-old me was, you know,
you're just
going. Yeah. But
I get that.
Yeah. So, you know, it definitely, you know, I'm very thankful for kind of like how things panned out in that moment, at least for myself, you know. And, you know, I just kind of had this opportunity to be like, stack up a bunch of bread, you know, like hang tight and just like be as minimal as possible. And I just saved up a ton of money and then went and, you know, kind of built some other investments and stuff like that and ended up here. And then just this space started off pretty bare too, honestly. Most of the stuff that's in here was not here when we first moved in.
How'd you find the space and what was it looking like?
So actually, shout out to one of my friends who's also a really great artist. His name's Shaz Like, and he used to actually be like living in this like same apartment block.
Mm-hmm.
He had no I'm sorry.
It's okay.
He had known he had known the people that were living down here, and he was just like, they're about to be moving out in like 2 months, and we had our lease up in 2 months, so we're like, okay, this is kind of perfect. So we came here, we saw the space, we're like, this was literally the first apartment we saw too, because it was like super early. We weren't even like super serious about looking yet.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, this is literally everything we wanted. And we locked it down, and we literally had this place like a lease signed 2 months in advance of us moving in here.
Oh shit.
You know, and so we just made a plan of attack, and then got in here, got to business.
You had to do it. You had to
know.
like paint. You had to put
Yeah.
the sound foam
Yup.
and stuff.
Paint, put up the sound foam, build this booth that's behind me. That one was not fun.
A lot of
That
trips to
was,
Home Depot and shit.
Quite a few. Didn't help that literally it was the first month or the second month that we had officially opened the studio here, that there was a really, really bad storm surge that happened in Brooklyn, and I think across New York in general.
Oh, okay.
You're all good.
I'm gonna just leave it there. I'll pick it up.
What's it called? There was like a really, really bad storm surge, and down here ended up getting hit with like 2 inches of water. Thankfully,
Holy shit.
the only thing that really got damaged was the carpets. So we had to replace the carpets like literally 2 months after we bought them, which was not fun.
No.
And then we also had to lift that guy to the booth.
Oh,
We had to lift the
shit.
booth to let it dry underneath so that the wood didn't rot.
Oh man.
Which was required 4 crowbars and a lot of wedges.
Yeah.
And it was not a fun
I would use
time.
the car shit. The shit you crank a car up with.
Yeah, but if you tried to do it up on one side, that
No,
thing
it's
is
fucked up, yeah.
breaking. So
Yeah.
you kind of need to be careful.
Holy
But
shit.
you know, thankfully, our first year we had a lot of really crazy stuff happen in here too. So that was definitely like among
beyond
the
the storm?
craziest. Ones that I'm not necessarily comfortable divulging into to the public, but this was one of the 3 major events. And unfortunately it wasn't the worst one. So
shit.
definitely had some really crazy stuff happen, but I think I feel really proud of myself and the people I work with that like we were able to like ride the storm through all that. Like we had like back to back to back like crazy things happen, and we managed to weather through it all, and
Makes you stronger
came
in
out
all
the
this.
100%. We do, we're again 3.5 years into having this space in particular, and we're doing great, and I couldn't really be happier with where our progress and our growth has come.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's sick. It's cool. It's crazy to even think like cuz when you guys were starting all this stuff up, and that year would be like what, like 2021 you would say when you were like.
Yeah, so we opened this space in August of 2021. That was when we had first got everything going in here.
Yeah, and you guys are real established. Like, you would look at this and you'd be like, damn, I think this shit's been here for 10 years,
I appreciate that.
You guys put that work in. And so right now, how's we talk a little bit about the past of the studio and whatever. And it's cool that you guys got through all those obstacles together because I think it's necessary in order to, like, function now,
Yeah.
But how's everything going now? Like, is everything up to your expectation, or do you feel like you could do better? Do you feel like you've outperformed when it comes to what you've envisioned for this studio?
I mean, I think the gift and the curse of every artist is the desire to do better.
Yeah.
I think that's no different for me. I try to be a little bit nicer to myself than I was in the past. I think there was a long time where I would not be satisfied with anything I did. And I feel like at that time, like from a mental standpoint, I could have owned every studio in the city and probably still not felt satisfied with my position. And I think being satisfied is less like the actual like position you're in and more so the state of mind that you exist in.
Right.
I've met people that have next to nothing and are happy. And I know people that have as more than I think I might ever have, and they're miserable. It's just, that's the reality of life. I think it's not what you have, it's what you feel like you have. And so I think I try to be more thankful and grateful for all the things that have come into my life, especially the people. I think that's the most important aspect of it all. And, with the studio too, that's a really big thing that I'm trying to do more of now, is implementing community. We started doing mixers on a regular basis last year. We've continued that. We're actually going to be doing a mixer in mid-February. I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but depending on when this drops, maybe that might be around that time. But regardless, they happen every month or two.
That's cool. So what, you just have like a bunch of artists come through and like network?
Yeah, we invite artists, producers, creatives, anyone who's even if you're just interested in the studio, we invite people to come over, hang out at the space, meet other artists. There always ends up being like a little like freestyle competition going on. I'll play some beats. Some of the other producers that come through will play some stuff. There's been a lot of crazy collaborations that have happened because people met here, and
that's dope.
I think for me to like be able to have a space where artists are coming together and people are coming together, like that is like a real goal of mine, and it's something I'm working on. But it's also not something that's so easy to do, especially because it's not as much of a tangible thing. You can't hold a community. You build it and you have it surrounding you, but it's not you and it's not yours to own.
Right.
And I think that's like the great thing about it, and also the thing that makes it hard to quantify, like how much are we doing? It poses an interesting challenge in that way, but I think also with that, it's challenged me to say, how can we do more of those things? How can we build out the studio in that, social aspect, that community aspect? And, we work with a lot of other people that's their mindset and that's their goals as well. And, I just hope that we can continue to do more of that.
I think it's dope that you guys nurture to that aspect of everything. Like, I always pride myself on like the community aspect of art, because I think it's like a very important part of it. Especially nowadays, people get so wrapped up in like money or statistics, analytics, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And so it's cool that you guys make sure to incorporate that into the studio. I think it's cool you guys nurture that. Even like with the podcast, I always pride myself on being like, I'm creating this web so people can network and meet each other, So it's cool that this is like that, but like physically in the real world, not some internet shit, So it's really cool.
Yeah.
Mixers every month. You guys hear that? Artists in the NYC area.
For sure. We post everything on our social media. So that's Studio 404 NYC. That's on Instagram. And you can just find out more about us and, see the cool things that we're doing. Another cool thing that we're doing right now, we've been collaborating with this mixed media production company. Mm-hmm. If you've ever heard of Project Feel.
I don't think I have.
Yeah, they actually had just had me on their podcast too, so that's kind of it's
dope.
Similar setup to like this. Funny enough, but what's it called? We had collaborated with them for basically like a live session series here in the studio.
Yeah.
That's called Live at Studio 404.
Nice.
And so from when we're filming this right now, we had just put out our first episode last week.
Nice.
And then our second episode is coming out next week. This is our second season though. So
Dope.
We had a season previous that we ran like about a year ago, and now we're finally following up. We're bringing more episodes.
And it's like a podcast feel? It's like a podcast feel, or like, is it like kind of like you guys are like...
No, it's like a live session. Like
people
that's
are
dope. Like performing live music.
Off the radar. That's what I was gonna ask too. I was about to be like, or is it like something like that? That's cool. That's dope. I was about to say, and how's that going? How's that?
Been doing great. I mean, the first episode we put out is with a close collaborator of mine and a really great artist. His name's Mikeymcchoppa, and it's been doing really well. He did his song Rediscovery, which is like this like R&B kind of like very like 70s Soul Train kind of inspired sound, and you know, we had just also filmed a music video for it too, which I'm excited to see
That's
where
dope.
that comes out. But yeah, it was a really great performance, and you know, that's also on our social media, so you can go check that out. But you know, that's also another way that we're trying to kind of explore the community building aspect, you know, like having artists come in here, perform, and also challenge them too. You know, we're doing it all live. It's not like, oh, you can just, you know, like throw a pre-recorded track on and start going. This is like perform your song, you know. And you know, it's really amazing when artists come in here and they showcase the full spectrum of their talent. You know, it's a really special thing, and it's just so unique to see too. I don't think you really get to experience something of that nature, and really
100%.
like in many other ways. And we're trying to bring it to, you know, especially the New York community, and you know, a lot of the artists that are doing great things out here that don't necessarily get those opportunities to do bigger things like Radar or you know, Tiny Desk Colors, those kinds of stuff that, you know.
Yeah, I always think we need more platforms like that cater to like the underground of any sort, you know?
Yeah.
Again, hence what, like with the podcast shit, you know? It's like people be like, oh, No Jumper. It's like you need 1 million followers to hop on No Jumper. It's like, it's dope. I really like where you approach shit in the sense of how you like do everything that you do, you know? It's very like authentic and very genuine and very like, very cool. Very well executed too. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, you know, and it's cool because you mentioned that, and it was so funny because it leads into my next question. I try to keep like a past, present, future thing.
Yeah.
We talked about you guys with the second room, you know, and the room outside of this room, and pretty much my question is like, what's your plans for expanding when it comes to the studio or even content ideas in the studio, stuff like that?
In the current space that we have right now, I don't necessarily see us expanding within this space.
Right.
I love being here and I love being in Brooklyn, but if greater opportunity calls to us elsewhere, then we'll bring that there. But, you know, we definitely are staying within New York. We're staying close to home. And we really want to be a place where artists can congregate and stuff like that. And, you know, so whatever gets us more towards those goals in the future is what we're going to do, you know, but in terms of the stuff that we're doing here, we have some other cool things in the works. You know, social media is kind of one of those things where like I do it, but like I'm not like the biggest fan of it.
I get it
for
completely.
Sure. But I've tried my best more to engage and build on that end, especially because that's like the best way to engage and build a community in the first place. Despite my issues with what social media is as a whole. Yeah. But you know, I think definitely like doing more in the ways of like, you know, like content and things of that nature to just kind of like put the word of Studio 404 out there, you know, be able to engage artists in whatever way we can. You know, Live Ad is a great series, but the one thing about it is that it does require you like playing live music, and I think not everyone is necessarily capable of that, or their music style doesn't fit that kind of thing.
Right.
And so we're definitely planning out like more so of like a freestyle or like live mic series, and that's kind of in the works right now. But I can't say much more past that.
Yeah,
because I don't have.
Keep it confidential.
It's very much in the works, I don't want to be like, oh, we're doing this and it's coming out tomorrow. But you know, definitely, I think anything that belongs in our future is things that showcase the space, showcase the talent of not just the people that work here, but the people we work with, our clients, artists, stuff like that.
Right.
And more ways to engage and build community throughout New York City when it comes to artists and other types of creatives.
Hell yeah. Yeah, bro, I love that. And I also wanted to ask, if you got the opportunity to move like anywhere, whether in New York City or if you could move the studio honestly anywhere, where would you move it to?
Are we talking like in the sense of like
just if you could
where would I actually want it to be, or like what's like dream destination to like work and live?
Give me both.
I feel like they're two different questions. I mean, I think for me the most practical place to be positioned studio wise is like in Manhattan. And that's definitely something that would probably be the primary goal for the future.
Yeah.
At least from my end, and that's, I'm speaking for myself and not necessarily representative of everyone else who belongs to the business. I don't want to speak on everyone's behalf, but I'm definitely saying for myself, I feel like, Manhattan is the most practical place to be because a lot of artists, don't want to leave Manhattan when it comes to doing studio and music work, which I can understand. But I think even beyond that point, it also grants more access to people that live in other areas too. It's a lot easier to go from Bronx or Queens to Manhattan than Queens to Brooklyn. I mean, like I have friends, I have friends that live in Forest Hills, and they're like, it's a 10-minute drive to get to you, but if I want to take the train, it's 45 to 50. It's the same amount of time it takes for them to get into the city. Yeah. And so I think from the the structural perspective of like how does like New York City function and how do people like come to places, like where do people go to congregate? There's a reason why Manhattan is the place where most people go to congregate. Yeah. And I think the more that we could place ourselves in that kind of place where we can position ourselves towards where people congregate, we're going to naturally be able to build more of the community and develop that aspect a lot faster, Yeah. But I think that's also why we chose to be in Bushwick at first, because there is so much community here already. There is so many artists. There's so many creative stuff like that. Right. So being within this area means we attract a lot of the people that are within this area and within Brooklyn. Yeah. And so even though we might not be in Manhattan, we might not be central to everyone, we're still central to a really crucial part of the music and the artist community. And I think that's definitely what has helped us. And I think that's also the reason why you see most studios that are in Brooklyn are in Bushwick.
Yeah. I was about to say, I was like, you did a good thing being right by the L train. I feel like the L train is like it has the rep for being like gentrified, because it's like lower Manhattan straight into Brooklyn, but that's like where a lot of like the artist types are coming in and out,
Yeah, 100%.
Every show I go to, underground show I go to, it's the J or the L train. I'm like, you're 100%, 100%. Taking me to the middle of
and we're 10 minutes from the L train too, or the J train. I apologize. Yeah, we're 10 minutes from the J train too. So, totally like within that kind of range, and
real good approach.
Yeah, we. Not too far from Broadway Junction, so it's still like generally speaking, like we place ourselves in a pretty good spot that like we're decently accessible for most people, especially people within Brooklyn. Oh yeah. So
do you feel like not to be funny? Do you feel like you're shitting on your neighboring studios? Do you feel like you're shitting on these guys, or you feel like it's like fair competition?
I mean, I'll say this much. I think a lot of people don't care to try as hard as I do.
Real shit.
And I've worked with so many people that have, like, I would say somewhere between 80 to 90% of artists that I've worked with point blank have had a bad experience with an engineer in the past, you know? And I've had so many times where people are like, yo, like, you're doing so great. Like, thank you for being so attentive. And like, I'm just here, like, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing right. And like, I'm just being like my usual self. And I just kind of like, there was a point where I just realized it's like, it's literally just because I give a shit, And I think that's also what was my core problem working at some of these bigger studios is they don't care about the people that they're working with. And that's what I brought on early on. And, I think even when you go down to the smaller level, you still see a lot of people like that. They're treating it like a business. Right. They're just trying to make money. Right. Or they just want to like grow something, They're not necessarily invested in like what am I doing to contribute to the artistic process? Right. What am I doing to work with other people? How am I building community, stuff like that? Because I think if you really want to build a place that's special, that has something unique to offer, there's a bunch of good studios in the city that sure are more expensive, but there's plenty of them that are only marginally more expensive than coming here. Mm-hmm. But if I have something unique to provide for people, they're going to come to me because I have something unique to provide. Right. And that's been my approach since day one. The fact is that all of us that work here, we produce as well. We produce music. And so, a lot of the artists that come to, work with us are coming to work with us because we're helping them make their songs. Yeah. We're producing their tracks for them, and we're recording them, and we're mixing them. We're helping them with, hey, we have people for cover art. let's get you in contact with them. You need a videographer, we have videographer
Yeah,
contacts.
it's
You need
more than
someone
a
who
studio,
needs,
it's like a network.
you know, exactly. And that's the thing too. Like I leverage the networks that we have. You know, I have people that work in digital marketing. You know, someone needs somebody to help with digital marketing.
Right.
I pass them along, you know, and I'm never like looking for any of these aspects of it to be transactional, you know? Like for me, when it comes to the studio, it's like I'm having you pay me because I need to be able to keep the lights on and I need to be able to eat.
Right.
You know, that's how I feel about it, you know? But like if someone's like, "Hey, get me in contact with, you know, videographer, graphic designer, digital marketer, lawyer, something, whatever that kind of thing may be," you know, and I've had all of those things come up to me many times, and even, you know, on a consistent basis, people are asking me for all those types of things.
Right.
I'm never looking to get something out of that. I'm not like, "Oh, hey, pay me this amount. I'm gonna get you in contact with this guy," or like I tell the guy like,
it's like,
"Oh,
all
like
love.
you know, pay me for the referral," something like that. It's literally just, "I got you. Let me connect you guys," and like, just off of doing that, like, people trust me. They trust me even more now because now they know like, "Oh, hey, like this guy like is gonna like help me out and he's gonna do good things for me," you know. So like I like him even more now. I'm gonna work with him.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna keep working with him because I feel that trust.
100%.
You know, I build that rep with the people I'm working with because that's what matters to me. You know, and I always tell people too, like it's like even if I wasn't like on a personal note, like invested in like and like wanting to care, like it's in my benefit if you're successful. Because then that means you're going to work with me more. So it's like, from my own perspective, from the business aspect of it, it pays to invest into people's growth and development and helping them along the way. Because if they continue to grow and develop, they're going to keep coming back to me. And they're going to come back to me more because now they have more work to get done.
100%.
And they have more work for me.
You guys are just continuing to feed each other, you know?
Exactly. And it's just, that's exactly how I see it. You know, it's just the thing of like, I'm focusing on the growth, I'm focusing on the long term, and I think most other people, they don't look at it that way, and I think that's what makes us special. I think there's other people out there that are doing a similar thing that I'm doing, or same way but with a different coat of paint. And you know, there's a lot of other studios and engineers that I know that I work with or I'm friends with, and I respect all of them because they exist on that same kind of level. They care about the craft. They care about what they're doing. They care about how they work with people. They have maybe their own edge or their own niche or whatever it may be that gives them that edge in the way that I have my edge. But I think it's just in the grand scheme of things, that's only a very small percentage of people that are in this business. Right. You know? And so I don't think I'm the only one. I don't think I'm the best, but I think I'm pretty good.
Hell yeah, yeah, and I love that. You got to stand on that confidently because this is a dope spot, dude, and you're doing dope things for real.
I appreciate it, man.
Hell yeah. What was I going to say? Before we lead towards like a wrap-up of sorts, I wanted to ask you kind of, you know, would you say you have a production style or you say you kind of a jack of all trades?
I think this is a good question. I think on one hand, I am like a jack of all trades. I can do a lot of different stuff, and like I can make something good for like most genres. Yeah. I'm convinced of that because I have done it, and I've probably done a decent range of the gamut in like the past month alone. Yeah. You know, you know, I think at the same time though, I have my sound, I have like my aesthetics, I have the things that I like, I have the tool set that I find myself using, those kinds of things. I think even if I can do a lot of different things, I have a lot of styles and genres that I can approach or I can produce, it still has my fingerprint, you know? And I think you can hear a beat from me, and even if all four of them that I played were from completely different genres, you'd still be like, oh yeah, that's his beat, you know?
When you're producing, you go by Aaron or like what's your tag?
ARDOUR. Yeah.
ARDOUR.
Yeah,
Nice.
and that's also
ARDOUR
my artist
beat.
name as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll make sure to link everything in description and stuff like that. Hell yeah. As well, this is just me getting out like curious questions as well. We talk a lot about working with underground artists and like artists giving artists opportunity. who's a like dream artist you want to engineer, like a big name that you're like, oh, that'd be sick.
Yeah, I mean, just because he's like the person that inspired me to like start making music, Porter Robinson is my answer.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love him. I love his music. I love his writing. I love his style. I think he's like one of the most like interesting and like creative artists that are like that's like currently making music. And yeah, no, I just feel like he'd be a really interesting person to work with. I think it'd be a really interesting challenge.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very fun, and he seems like a cool guy.
Hell yeah, that's dope. Man, that's sick. This is, yeah, it's been so dope. It's been a dope episode. Before we lead towards like a wrap up of sorts, is there anything you want to talk about? Because it is your interview, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we kind of covered everything. I mean, I would just say for like the audience here, you know, if you're interested in finding out more about the studio, as I mentioned, our Instagram, Studio 404 NYC. You can find out more about us. You can visit our website. You know, learn more about me, the other people that work there. And you know, if you're interested, slide by for a mixer or even, you know, come book a session and, you know, I can help you bring an idea to life or elevate something that maybe you're already working on.
Hell yeah. Yo, bro. This is such a dope thing you do. Like, I get really overwhelmed, I guess, by like the feelings of just like real like real shit, like community shit, like, and also like obviously art and all this stuff. So just being in this environment, even, it like gives you a good mood, you know? I'm like, I'm chipper to do this interview in Studio 404 right now, you know?
I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. So now it leads us pretty much to the last question, I think, if I'm not, well, you know what? Actually, I do want to ask you, when it comes to both like, no, when it comes to production, before we finish it off.
Yeah.
Some of your inspirations.
As mentioned, Porter Robinson, definitely up there. MF Doom, I loved listening to him a lot. Nuja Bays, up there, 100%. I really like a lot of stuff that like Kenny Beats does. You know, I don't like his newer stuff, or maybe him as a person, not him, but Ye.
Yeah.
A lot of incredible, informative music, but you know, maybe not as much a fan of him now, which is happens, you know.
It does happen. What do you think?
And there's definitely like some other names that I'm probably forgetting there, but you know, I would also say, beyond the big artists and the people that I listened to in my formative years, MGMT, that's also up there, 100%.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
And you know, I think it's also just the people around me, the other artists and producers I work with, and that you know, my guys at the studio, all the artists that I do beautiful music with. I think those people also serve as inspiration.
Oh yeah.
On a daily basis, and you know, I think that also is what helps propel me to be greater in everything I do.
Hell yeah, bro. It's been a good one. This has been dope.
No, for sure. It was a pleasure speaking with you, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So now, last question. Aaron, what do you got going on next day, week, month, year, decade, millennium, century, or so? It doesn't have to be music related or anything.
For sure.
What are you eating for breakfast tomorrow?
Breakfast tomorrow is probably going to either be some yogurt or maybe like 14 eggs. We'll see how we feel.
14 eggs.
Yeah.
Protein.
I don't have enough eggs for that. I would have to buy.
You have to buy like
I'd have to buy
packs.
I just got a dozen eggs and I just had 2 of them, so I'd have to get at least another half dozen. I mean, if they sell it in like 4 eggs, then I would have enough eggs left. Yeah. But you know, I'd have to get the half dozen probably to
these
do
egg
that,
prices,
you know.
man.
But man, yeah, I did pay $8 for that 12 eggs. That kind of hurt me.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm here at the studio. You know where to find me. I said it like 3 times already. Studio 404 NYC on Instagram. My personal Instagram is ARDOUR.NYC. That's ARDOUR.NYC. I post some of my own music sometimes. I post beats, and you know, always happy to speak if, you know, again, looking to do something great together.
Oh yeah, hopefully some time passes and we get you back for a part 2.
For sure, yeah.
Studio 404 will be like Studio 808 or some shit. It'll be like this conglomerate.
Man. We're gonna have just one big old speaker in the back. Just gonna shake half of Manhattan. I got you, my man.
Yo, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on and giving
sure.
me the opportunity with the space and equipment and all that. This is the most high quality
100%.
Cult of Personality episode ever. Holy shit. You hear how crisp this is? Anywho, I'm your host per usual, Mikeymcchoppa. Thank you guys for joining me for the last hour or so. Make sure to check links in the description as well as, you know, all that cool stuff. Come on now. Thank you again. This is
Thank you for having
Brooklyn,
me.
New York, Studio 404. Come tap in, recording artist, all that good stuff. You know, what else do I have to say? Peace for the world, peace in the Middle East. Love you all. Peace, love, and hair grease.
See ya.
And see ya.